shields!
Ready yourself!
Hold! Raise! Steady shields! Hold, men! Hold!
Let's go! Pick it up!
Shields, men!
Steady up, lads!
Hold! Testudo!
Stand fast! Get
Shields!
ready!
Hold, shields! Hold, men! Hold!
Fall back! Fall back!
Let's all feel old together, shall we? It's been about 11 years since the original version of the Xbox One launched. Yeah, remember that? Remember all the controversies leading up to it? Remember the lack of game sharing, forced always online, and worse yet, requiring you to use the Kinect to run the Xbox One? Do you remember the anger? Because I certainly do. It's part of why I ended up with a PS4 instead that generation, despite having really enjoyed the 360. Yeah, things weren't exactly going well for Xbox this time around. However, as I searched through my Steam library, looking at the backlog I've amassed over the many years of playing on PC, something stuck out to me. It's an Xbox One launch title that came to PC a year later, making this year officially its 10th anniversary as far as PC is concerned. It's a relatively short action game in one of my favorite historical periods, vaguely Roman era. But all I remember hearing about it were aggressively meh responses from critics at best before it faded into obscurity. So now I'm digging up this little old thing and seeing what it had to offer. Was it really as bad or boring as the reviews said, or was it just swept up in all the Xbox hate at the time? We're gonna find out today. This is Ryse, Son of Rome.
They are a race of rabid bastards who will fight us tooth and nail! But they don't know what they are up against. Rome is civilization! Rome is order! Rome is power! And out here, we are Rome! Secure the remaining boats and get them unloaded, and prepare the men. We march for York!
Seeing as this was one of the Xbox One's launch titles, Ryse was made especially to show off the technical capabilities of the console on the graphics front, just like most launch titles are. With that, Ryse does manage to look really good even 10 years later, although it took some mucking about with the resolution settings to get it right on PC. But that's more of a me thing. With a 1440p monitor and a dual monitor setup, a lot of games can't really deal with that initially. And the game really wants to get across a cinematic feeling, and I'm using massive air quotes there, because the most they really do is just give you a film grain that you can't remove. And it does everything it can to try and make transitions between cutscenes and gameplay seamless. However, it uses pre-rendered cutscenes a lot, so the seamlessness is lost in most of those parts. Combat looks very pretty, nice, smooth, all those nice adjectives, though probably a byproduct of the game's origins as a Kinect exclusive game. But we'll get into the details of the gameplay later. For now, though, let's get into the real fun part for me, the story.
Hold!
Friends of Rome, may I present to you Basilius, son of the Emperor.
Commander Vitalian. Congratulations on your safe arrival. Had it been any later, you might have missed out on all the fun. I do trust your journey was not too arduous.
Sir, I would
My
like to...
Praetorian Guard will take over now. Guards, seize the Briton scum.
Your Highness, I must
In case you're
protest...
unaware, my brother Commodus is still missing. I intend to find out what these savages have done with him.
We Britons lived in peace under the rule of the old Roman chieftain. But this new chieftain, Commodus, son of your king, is evil. He deserves the fate that he is suffering. I've nothing more to say.
Then it is clear to me that you Britons do not love as we Romans do.
Okay, so the story of this game is weird. Looking from the outside at the first level or so, you might think this is just some flashy historical fiction, right? It's the Roman Empire, Rome is burning, there's Nero doing his thing of neglecting the empire, all that, and we end up playing as a Roman soldier named Marius. Everything seems good so far, save for the rather obvious Hollywoodification of Rome itself that you would expect, gladiator style, right? The thing that I recall being interesting to me back in the day was the fact that the game actually sent you out to Roman Britain to quell Boudicca's rebellion, something that's usually not touched on in most Rome-themed media. But then after like 2 levels, the rebellion is stopped. Not by defeating Boudica, no, that's a previous boss fight that doesn't actually show her being defeated, but rather by defeating her father, King Oswald, whom everything seems to point towards him being totally made up for this game, so that's a big strike. And then this is where things get even weirder, because it turns out that somehow the Britons managed to kidnap Nero's son Commodus, and then send him past what is called the Wall, into what is presumably Alba, aka Scotland, where a bunch of crazy horned pagans live and we're gonna sacrifice Commodus via a wicker man. The main 2 things that jumped at me here were Commodus and the Wall. The Boudican Revolt and the reign of Emperor Nero line up, with the revolt occurring around 60-61 AD, and Nero reigning from 54 to 68 AD, right? So, that's all good. Well, Commodus is a rather famous or infamous emperor. If you've seen the movie Gladiator, like I mentioned earlier, yeah, the little brat is him. The thing is, the real Commodus was born in 161, a whole 100 years after the end of the Boudican Rebellion, and the wall that gets mentioned could only be referencing Hadrian's Wall, built to keep the Picts out of Roman Britannia. The construction of this wall started around 122 AD, also a pretty long time after the end of the revolt. Now, these are Wikipedia numbers, so take them with a grain of salt. I'm not a history tuber here, but I'd say the records are well researched enough that I'm pretty confident this much is true. Why did I detail all of this? Because the story constantly brings in these new developments, explains nothing, and then moves on. It will just bring in a new character, an aesthetic, or a place, or some other thing from Roman history or mythology, mention it, and then it just exists. It just won't explain anything. This whole thing goes from a revenge plot where Marius is avenging his family that was killed by barbarians, discovering some classic Roman conspiracy was involved, to the story actually being 2 ancient Roman deities using humans as pieces to play a game of whether human civilization will collapse or not, with Marius essentially turning into the ancient Roman equivalent of the Ghost Rider in the process. We go from historical fiction to wacky historical fiction to full-blown historical fantasy, and nothing is ever actually explained. On some level, I respect it, but it also leaves the whole thing feeling very abrupt and kinda disappointing, as we don't get to see more of what this fantastical version of Earth looks like, where gods are playing humanity like pieces on a chessboard. Especially since it's implied at the end that Rome just lives on forever now. And yes, I'm spoiling the whole thing. I'm fairly certain that nobody who's deeply interested in the story of Ryse, son of Rome, hasn't played it already. After all, it's not like you're doing this for the gameplay. Right? The gameplay is really not much of anything at all. For a game this flashy, you'd think there might be some pretty cool things you can do that involve big effects or wiping out a bunch of enemies at once, but not really. It's a very basic hack-and-slash action game. You run forward in what are fundamentally linear corridors that pretend like you can explore them because they have the occasional collectible, reaching the next enemy encounter and/or set piece that you then experience. And I say experience because there's very minimal challenge to the whole thing. You have a sword attack, shield attack, hold either one down for a stronger version of it, as well as the ability to dodge or block incoming attacks. That's basically it. You've also got this focus meter thing, but all it actually does is temporarily slow down time and stun nearby enemies so that you can take out more of them extra fast for about a minute or so. It's not useful beyond making encounters end faster, as not even boss enemies are affected by it. And speaking of bosses, every boss in this game is just a basic enemy with either a gimmick or extra health and stun immunity. It's particularly annoying because you realize quickly just how railroady this game really is. There's rarely a boss where you can sneak in hits. If you don't follow the boss's exact pattern of blocking until they deliberately leave themselves open, you get punished. So every boss fight just devolves into repeating the exact same motion over and over again until you can do their unique execution, assuming they have one. And executions are these quick-time events that you do when an enemy reaches a certain health threshold, allowing you to kill them and gain a reward of your choice once it's finished. The thing is, you don't get punished for even failing the quick-time events. If you hit the wrong button, noted by the color the enemy is highlighted in, you just lose score. The execution still goes through, and you still get your reward. There's no reason to care about executions because of this, and they get boring really quickly as there's a very small pool of them. The only punishing quick-time events are these traps that you encounter in like one level in Britannia, where they insta-kill you if you fail, but that's a single level hazard. The last thing the game has going for it is your ability to quote-unquote command other Romans when you're around them. In reality, it's just another set piece made to look cool rather than provide any actual challenge. Just push this one button when prompted and keep doing whatever else you're doing and you're good. All in all, the gameplay is extremely boring and repetitive, clearly made to prioritize looks over any actual fun or challenge. Like I said, you're definitely not picking up this game for the gameplay.
We meet again, Roman. This time yield or pay the price.
And let you destroy Rome. Never!
We can't both win. And I've come too far to let you stand in my way.
So yeah, frankly, unless you happen to already have it in your library for some reason like I do, I would not recommend this game to anybody looking for a decent little action game to occupy some time. The story is inexplicable nonsense, the gameplay is boring, and everything certainly looks very pretty, but graphics can only take a game so far. Overall, I'd say this game deserved the reviews it got back during the launch day a whole decade ago now. This has been TheRatMan, and I will see you all later. And lastly, a thank you shout out to Mike Uniturtle. Thank you for the $5.